Well, hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Embracing One and All, Evolving from Geospatial Data to Knowledge Infrastructures. My name is Amy, and I'm the Operations Manager here at National State Geographic Information Council. If you are unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to know more information on how to get involved with us, please visit our website, www.nishig.org, and I will pop that into the chat box shortly. Just some reminders for our call today, all attendees have been muted on entrance, and there will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So please place your questions into the chat box and they will be read aloud at the end. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available afterwards, so please be on the lookout for that. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenters.
Jill, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for joining us this afternoon for the NSGIC webinar, Embracing One and All, Evolving Geospatial Data to Knowledge Infrastructures. I'm Jill Salago-Simmel. I'm the Principal Product Manager for Geospatial Infrastructure and Modern SDI at Esri. Anthony?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anthony Puzo with Esri. I've been with Esri about 15 years now. I think like tomorrow will be 15 years. I'm our state government team lead, and we'll be presenting with Jill here today. So thank you for joining with us. I've been engaged with NSGIC for well over 10 years, and I love being part of this community. So look forward to presenting with you today, and would like to take your questions here too.
So today we're going to be going through our presentation in a story map, and I just want to let everyone know ahead of time that at the end we'll have a QR code and provide the link to the story. So if there's resources that are in here that you'd like to explore more on your own, you'll have full access to all of the resources in this story map.
Great.
So today, what we are experiencing together with you is an evolution of spatial data infrastructures, and how we think about SDI or spatial data infrastructure is evolving, because of course technology is not static, it's constantly evolving, and SDIs are evolving with that. So where once we may have thought about delivering SDIs through metadata catalogs. I know that when I started with our Indiana GIS Council over 20 years ago, this was our first starting point with a statewide metadata catalog. Over time, these have evolved into federated portals. And today we see this evolution into what we consider really more digital ecosystems. So going from search and discovery to more integration and use. With this, we really want to recognize the important roles of the communities of practice. Geospatial collaboratives like ones that you're all engaged in are really inherently multi-organization. And although the structure does vary from place to place, globally, we see that they all rely on the collaboration of multiple parties to function and to thrive. So I like to think about that community of practice as being like a three-legged stool of the content providers, coordinating bodies like geospatial information offices and GIS councils, and the content consumers. And that content consumers can be broad audiences, including decision makers, researchers, students, of course, the GIS community and developers, as well as an engaged public. And as we think about digital ecosystems, we can think about these organizations, these communities of interest interacting with the information technology components and functioning as a unit. So geospatial ecosystems really include the people, processes, the data and the technology that come together. And if we think about ecosystems kind of as that concept, we can think of content flowing through a geospatial ecosystem, much like the nutrients and energy in biological ecosystems. And it's really conveyed by those applications that bring the content to life. I like to think about how these communities of interests, like many of your own, have spheres of influence. And those spheres of influence really is where it's the realm of the content consumers. And in this ecosystem concept, where once we might have thought of SDIs as more hierarchical, now we're looking at this dynamic network where content consumers oftentimes will belong to more than one community of practice, more than one community of interest. And those communities intersect and they overlap. Oftentimes, that sphere of influence, your interest, that area of interest is with those other spatial communities that are closer, not always, or more so than those that might be further away. And then these are also influenced by technology and policies and other influencers like policy directives and standards development organizations like OGC and ISO, by non-governmental organizations and initiatives like the UN Global Geospatial Information Management Organization, and public-private partnerships. So all of these coming together in a blend of a geospatial ecosystem. At Esri, we believe that sharing, collaboration, and interoperability in heterogeneous environments are crucial to addressing today's challenges with urgency. And I want to emphasize that with urgency piece, because many of the challenges that we face together as a community are much bigger than what we can handle on our own. And they're urgent issues like climate, food, immigration, agriculture, economy, issues that are bigger than individual organizations, so that collaboration is key. And geospatial infrastructure is the enabler that powers modern GIS and enables this integrated system of systems, or that geospatial ecosystem. Geospatial infrastructure manages the security and privacy, accessibility and identity management, and spaces for sharing and collaboration. It manages the content negotiation through open standards, APIs, licenses, and marketplaces. As organizations integrate their geospatial infrastructure, they're able to quickly and easily interconnect across borders, jurisdictions, and sectors to share and collaborate. Now, one of the ways that we can look at success today is looking at examples from many of the states, which are doing really terrific things in this space, and then use some of these examples and these patterns that are repeatable and use those in good practices and help to use those to inspire future directions. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Anthony, to go through some of these examples.
Great, thanks, Jill. Yeah, we're going to go over a couple of examples today. One, couple doing foundational data initiatives, sharing data, a couple of whole government collaborations where they're really sharing peer-to-peer across the organization, multi-level where they're going from local to state and state to federal, and then emerging trends we're seeing with the use of hub and other technologies. And we've really seen this all come together where we can move out of siloed information and not have to move data around, and we can federate data by using web services, as Greg mentioned here in a quote from an article a couple of years ago. My first example I want to walk through is Open Data DC. I called it state examples. They're sort of a state. They're kind of like a state, a county, a city, a federal agency, whatever you want to call them. But they are a leader in the way that they share their data. They're sharing over 1,500 data sets. And this isn't just map GIS data. This is table services. This is Excel data, documents that they're sharing through their applications. And you can search that right off the main page here. Another thing that they do is they provide a lot of context around the data that they're providing. So it's not just a data download. That used to be, 10 years ago, where you would just download a KML or a shapefile. And now they're actually providing some of the data components for this, like some of their demographic information. These by the numbers are pieces that they're pulling off the mayor's website, where they're showing where economic development places are and how that matches up to the mayor's goals. One thing that I really love that they do, and this is kind of a pattern that we're seeing that's included in some of the best practices, is how they're providing contextual information around specific data initiatives, like their addressing, their imagery, their roadway segments, their property lots. And I'm going to go into this data inventory here in a second. Why this is important is that you think about addressing, oh, it's just simple addressing. Well, in DC, it actually comes from two different places. It comes from the mayor's office and the financial office. And so there's a lot that goes into just addressing in DC. So what they do is they provide a lot of the context around this information. And so you can get a little bit more information about how and why an address becomes to play. One thing I show often is their enterprise dataset inventory site. This is a hub page that they created that really outlines their data policy. When the former CDO came into office, they were going to write an open data policy and realized that they needed a data policy. So they went through and wrote a data policy to have an open data policy. And the one thing that they mainly did was they looked at different levels of data. So not every piece of data is open by default. You do have restricted information. It could be undercover cops or other things that you don't want to share. You might have HIPAA related data or PII related data. So we have different levels of data categories here. And then they've, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've done an inventory over all the data sets they have. And they've added it to this current inventory so you can see all of the data throughout the DC agency. It's a really nice way of, one, you want to start your own data policy. They provide everything publicly, and then you can also provide some tools to do your own inventory. So really nice data set. And this actually has pulled into other agencies for them to do their own contextual information off of the data itself. The next one is Alaska. Jill, do you want to go through Alaska?
Yeah, Alaska is another great example of leveraging ArcGIS Hub to, with their GIS Council, to have foundational data work groups. So kind of that weaving the fabric and having working groups that can build those collaborative relationships with the subject matter experts and sharing that content through their framework. So what we see here in the council side is sharing their vision, their mission, and the strategic goals of the council. And then they've established working groups for each of their foundational data themes. So for example, if we look at the transportation working group, I really find it a compelling way to communicate information about the different data sets in their transportation theme. And what we see here is that for roads, railroads, airports, and so forth, they're able to look at and present what is this data set about in really kind of human-friendly, easy to understand terms. They embed the maps and data sets right into their different pages for each of their theme. And then they use these working groups to put together their standards and to coordinate and also include the events that they have coming up with their working groups. So this is a really effective way that Alaska has been able to bring volunteers, many volunteers together in their GIS council to focus and be able to have clear communication about their foundation.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. The second data one is really around North Carolina's OneMap. They've done a great job of kind of consolidating all the data from across state government and bringing that into a one-stop shop here to bring in all different imagery information, property, address information, all into one place. And they've also done a really nice job of looking at data initiatives. So if we look at broadband, they compile all the contextual information about what's going on with broadband And this has really supported the state broadband initiative. So it is separate. It's a separate group that does this, but they kind of put all the data and resources into one application, and they're doing crowdsourced information and doing transparency dashboards like this total project cost. So it doesn't have to be a big separate thing. It could all be in one place and share the data all in one area. So this is a really nice way of building out contextual information. And then they're also sharing out a lot of their imagery through here. And so they're showing where they're doing imagery flights, comparisons of that, where the project status is of different areas around the state. And then they have applications that you can download tiles from this. So really nice way of coordinating all of the data assets they have across the state, providing the contextual information for different disciplines, and then providing applications to download that data. So a really nice job by North Carolina on pulling this information together. And then we have a lot of organizations looking at like the whole of government. So how do we do collaboration across state government? And Kim in the GIO's office has done a really nice job here of pulling in a lot of different data feeds of work that was already done. So she doesn't have to go and move all this data from DOT or Fish and Wildlife. She's tapping into the data resources that are already done here. They have their own open data applications. FDOT has their own, FDEX has their own, Fish and Wildlife has their own open data resources that you can get the data there, but she's federating all the data to the open data portal so you can search and discover and download all the data feeds that are coming in there. And you can also link back to the different organizations and partner sites here that you can get a little bit more information. So FDOT's going to include a little bit more of the applications and context around their data, where the open data portal is just going to give you the data services itself. And they're also pulling in a lot of the water management districts from across the state. So there's 5 major water management districts, and all of that data is getting pulled into one portal so you can get access to that. California is doing a very similar thing. Instead of cataloging a lot of the different open data portals, they're actually going through here and looking at the data sites and putting them into groups. And so if you're looking for housing and community development data, you can click on that, and then all that the data associated with that, if that category gets pulled in, and then you can search and discover those data components here. Did I miss anything on that, Joe? Good.
Good.
And then we have a lot of organizations looking at that multi-level collaboration. And Nebraska is a good example of this, where they have a state portal for all the Nebraska state organizations, but they're also reaching down to the locals and federating that data up from the locals up to the state portal, so you can search and discover data that's coming from like Douglas County Open Data Portal. So the data that's coming through here is also referenced from the locals up to the state organization, where you can get local historic districts from the locals to the state application. And that's all searchable, and you can filter on this in their data portal. So all of this is federated. They don't have to move any data, and they call that information. We showed a couple of examples, but there's many more. Jill, how many are we up to?
Every state has a clearinghouse or portal, but about 37 states now are using ArcGIS Hub. And so this map has hub sites, clearinghouses, as well as council sites. If you want to explore them, all of those are live linked. And if you do have a hub site that we don't have in here yet, just let us know, and we'll make sure to get you added here.
We've also seen a trend of using Hub for initiative-based applications. So providing even more context over issues that are happening. And this is actually a story map from the Kentucky tornado response. But what this is doing is really leveraging the hundreds of statewide data layers that are at the fingertips of the first responders, and using that in a way to make contextual information for their internal groups, to their first responders and the public. And it's really not possible if you don't have that data at their fingertips. So you can catalog all that information in a timely manner. Something like a tornado event that happens, could happen overnight. They need the information now. Jill, you want to talk about Hawaii's Aloha Challenge?
So you may have seen some of the Sustainable Development Goals websites or hub sites, the SDGs. We have an SDG solution, which is available. This is an initiative that from the United Nations that many countries are involved in and are promoting. I think that it's interesting to see others also implementing the Sustainable Development Goal concepts, both at the state level as well as at local and even hyper-local neighborhood levels. So this example just shows how Hawaii has taken the SDGs and has the Aloha Challenge. They've included their upcoming events and data, other initiatives that they've put together to support the Sustainable Development Goals.
And I love this scorecard that they've included here. This is really around performance management. So you can take apps like this and see if they're on track or they need improvement. This is a really nice way of kind of cataloging that information.
It's a great example of putting the data to use. Absolutely.
Another one is FEMA's GIS. They've really used Hub to catalog a lot of the different data that they're collecting over time based on some hazards that they have. And looking at things like hurricanes, they're cataloging a lot of different current status of what's going on right now, current hurricane advisories, a lot of different data resources from the locals. One thing I really love that FEMA has done is that they've pulled this all into these separate hub pages. So what's good about this is that you can catalog something like this. You could spin up a hub page and create that contextual information around one event. So this is Hurricane Ian down in Florida. It has the period of time, and this will catalog all of the different imagery, data applications, data sets, any different files that were collected over this major event. And they have it all in one-stop shop that's right here. And if you don't need it anymore, you can take it down publicly, or you can just archive it like what they did. And you can go back and you can search all of these different incidents over the last 4 years or so. So you can go back to each one and search that and pull up each one. So this is a really nice pattern of use to provide information and historical information based on these events. And this is something I could see as a trend for other state emergency management offices or other places where they want to catalog things based on events like this. So really nice job by FEMA being the leader there. Jill?
So that makes a really nice transition into talking about some of the activities around the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. And I wanted to show this climate mapping for resilience and adaptation hub site, this portal that really is a multi-organizational initiative led by the White House involving several federal agencies that takes the content that's been available through the NSGIC and puts it into a knowledge system for people to use across the country. So this is a really compelling application hub site on its own. Organizations can go in through this camera assessment tool here. They can do projections of what the climate should be in their particular area and get back a report. The idea is that an organization that's looking to do infrastructure investments should be basing that infrastructure on climate projections into the future rather than relying on what the climate was like 10, 20, 50 years ago. One of the things that I find compelling about this, though, behind the scenes, is the speed at which this camera portal was deployed. So in just a matter of weeks, rather than months or years, this portal was developed and published. This, I think, is an example of technology supporting that acting with urgency, because we all know that when projects take months and years, budgets can change, administrations can change, a lot of things can happen, let alone not having the resources at your fingertips during that development period. What enabled this to happen was the availability of decision-ready data that was already, the hard work there had been done behind the scenes, and that made this all able to come together so quickly. So
now, all the data resources are here too. So behind the scenes, all the extreme heat, the drought, wildfire, flooding, coastal inundation, all of those data services are provided as open data. If you wanted to provide this into your own portal as a climate section, or just clip this to your state, you can do that as well. You could take the same data service and register that in your portal, and this could be part of your SDI library as well.
yeah, that's right, Anthony. And we'll have some more things coming with regards to really leveraging those web GIS patterns and leveraging web services in that way. So the FGDC is responsible for managing the national geospatial data assets and the NGDAs, the NGDA portfolio of all of the different NGDA data themes. I wanted to show this because within the Geo platform for the NGDA communities, they're putting the structure in place to manage communities very much in the same way that we saw with some of the other state examples, like within Alaska or North Carolina, like we saw in DC with those foundational data initiatives. Here we see the NGDA portfolio. This is available on the Geo platform, where they've lay out the authorization and the vision, the mission, and then for each of the NGDA data themes, they've established the structure for having communities of practice around addresses, around biodiversity, around transportation, around each of these data themes that are identified as NGDAs. So I think it's fair to say this is kind of a starting point, but as we go to the future of the NSDI and look at what is the NSDI going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, hopefully some of the examples that we've looked at here today can start new conversations, spark new thinking about what could be within the NSDI. The FGDC is leading the NSDI strategy for 2024 and onward. That process is just getting started. The current NSDI strategic plan expires in 2024. And so the new strategy, FGDC will be working collaboratively with partners and stakeholders in the geospatial community to develop that plan and establish new goals, objectives, and what does that sustainable development of the NSDI look like? There will be multiple opportunities for input, involvement, participation at all levels of government and across multiple sectors. This is something that I think that the community nationwide has been actively asking for, looking for, and is embracing. So we've included just a couple of the meeting forums that are coming up that are opportunities to engage with that. This includes, there will be an FGDC public meeting at the Esri UC in July. So if you're at the UC, we would welcome you to join us there and join the FGDC at their planning meeting, which sorry, I don't have the specific date and time on, but we'll have that on the schedule. There will be a GeoGov Summit in September, as well as the NSGIC annual meeting, which I hope everyone will be attending. And there'll be some FGDC strategic planning activities there. So we've seen a number of examples, and I have to say there are so many more. I know many of you, not everyone, that are on the call, and look forward to meeting others. But I've been involved with NSGIC for nearly 25 years, and have been involved at one time in helping to lead our statewide council here in Indiana. And one of the things that I'm in a privileged position to be able to do today is really look at your implementations, look at the good practices and examples that are coming out of every state. Everyone is doing something right, but pulling those together and identifying those repeatable patterns and good practices that we can then share with others. So really lifting up and embracing one and all, if you will, so that we can move further, faster together. So part of this work has been putting together these 6 good practice guides to help organizations jumpstart their initiatives, or for existing initiatives to look at additional good practices that they can put in place. These include good practices and guidance around configuring an ArcGIS organization for this multi-org kind of collaboration, configuring hub sites, configuring those collaborations. Maybe one of the more important ones is this good practice guide for authoritative data providers. So the good practices in this guide really come from your good work. We really went through across the country as well as worldwide and looked at organizations, looked at good practice guides that were out there and brought them together into this kind of globally inspired good practice guide. There's 9 good practices here. I'll just mention a couple of them so you can kind of get a flavor for what these are like. The first is maintain persistent web services. Not everyone is familiar yet really with working in a web GIS enabled world. And we know that that's the technology pattern in the future. It's the technology pattern of today. But really, as a good practice, making sure that your partners understand that maintaining that persistent web service with unchanged item IDs and URLs is important, because when they share, other people will rely on those web services. And if that web service URL changes, guess what? You guys have all experienced this. You just broke everyone else's stuff. So that's absolutely our good practice number 1. We have others in here around putting to, naming conventions and item information and metadata. The last good practice is go further with maps and apps. So when you're ready, you've prepared your content, you're sharing it out, you're connecting with your data consumers. Now you want to go further and connect with your information consumers. Those people, decision makers, others that are hungry for the knowledge and information that are in your data, but don't know how to work with GIS. So the good practice here is to share versions of your authoritative data as maps and apps that are appropriate to different audiences. I think we saw some great examples here with some of the examples that Anthony showed with organizations already doing this. The really exciting thing to me here is that you're using instant apps. You can really quickly and efficiently do this, because instant apps are quick, easy, no code applications that are really just perfect for this kind of a purpose. And we've put in links here to other topics that are related that help with this kind of engagement. So these good practice guides are available to you all, and I really view these as living resources So we welcome feedback, and these will be continually evolving guides. We've put these with our Learn GIS team as learning paths. We're working now on a curriculum that will be available at our UC in July, that will have a lot of lesson plans that also go along with these. With the idea that if we can help uplift you and your partners, that your partners will be better prepared to participate in your geospatial community. And then finally, so that those that haven't implemented yet don't have to start from scratch, we've pulled the good practices and these repeatable patterns that we saw across so many of these examples into a single one map template. And you'll see here that we want to lead with making an impact, lead with putting the data to use. We've brought in that jurisdiction at a glance, like what you saw in Washington, DC. We've brought in browsing by category, some initial templates around foundational data initiatives, contributing partners, and so forth. So this template really can help organizations just get a leg up on getting started. So again, these resources are available to you, and we have a website where we've put together around 4 pillars of components of an integrated geospatial infrastructure, many more examples and resources that talk either about collaborative governance, the data and technology, capacity building, as well as tech examples and techniques for community engagement. So let's go ahead and spend a few minutes to talk about what's new and what's coming next.
Great, thanks, Joe. Esri is a user-driven technology company. We're listening to our users all the time and looking for new ways that we can enhance the technology. I could go on for another hour of what's new, what's coming. I'll save that for Esri UC. Hopefully you can meet us in San Diego and talk about that. I've got a couple of things that I think kind of fit into the theme of SDI on how we can enhance what we're delivering to the public and our partners. The first one is this new feed within ArcGIS Enterprise 11.1 of doing custom data feeds. If you've ever used, one of the secret sauces of open data and Hub is Coop. Coop is an open source project that allows us to take data, transform it, allows you to download that as a KML shapefile or a CSV. Well, we've done something similar like that into Enterprise 11.1 now, where you can do custom data feeds into read only. And so what this will allow you to do is to publish out non-editable feature services, data services, could be from another open data platform or data service from a business system or something, and create that service to connect that to your Hub library. Why this is important is that you don't really have to republish everything. You're just connecting to it and creating a feature service of it so you can catalog it into your Hub and your SDI here seamlessly. So really nice update here, moving to 11.1 in Enterprise. A couple of new Hub updates. One that's released with our premium users is Hub Discussions. This has been asked about a lot because they want to create conversations, whether that's internal conversations or external conversations around different areas. Now, this could be based spatially, like on a map, or it could be based discussions around a certain data set. When is it going to be updated? How often is it updated? When's the imagery? How do I get it? All those different questions can be answered in this new Hub discussion. So instead of doing a survey 1, 2, 3 to get feedback and you get information as a 1 point, here's a good way that you can kind of create conversations around each one of those data sets and applications. So Hub discussions, look out for that. A couple of new things that are coming with the next release in beta will be, one is projects. So this has been a popular way, if you kind of saw that FEMA site where they had Hurricane Ian into a page like that. Well, projects will be a new template that's attached to the site that you can create multiple projects and keep all the same infrastructure within Hub. So You want to create the same team. You want to connect to the same data. You want to connect to the same apps. You could do that all with projects, and you can highlight that and just create a one page of just projects. This is a great way of kind of leveraging it for website capabilities and providing that context so you can provide information in a timely manner.
And Anthony, I think that those projects, I mean, I can envision organization using this similar to like the FEMA site that you showed where each event has a project page.
Exactly.
Something along those lines. So that's exciting.
A popular way of using Hub I've seen is around capital improvement projects. So at Maryland DOT, they have the projects portal where they're using a hub to highlight each one of their, I think there's 147 or so major capital projects, where in the past you used to only get either a blurb about that project, or you get the 6,000 page PDF. Now you can create a project page on this, a one-stop shop where it gives you like the cliff notes, the executive overview of that project, where the project is, where they at, is it design, construction, who's the contact for it, is there any documents or videos about that? You could put that all into one project area. Now the project could be a project like a capital project. It could be a data project that you have, like a data initiative, like what Alaska was doing. So you could use the same way of kind of framing that project and creating a team around it, and then putting that as a collaboration piece. Same thing we've heard from our users is they want to capture information better from the public or even internally. So they're internal users and the public. So there's going to be this new ideas board where you can vote up different ideas within it. So maybe somebody's like, hey, will you publish a data service of all the restaurants in the state? And you can kind of vote that up or vote that down. And you can create a nice little idea board out of that. So that's another nice tool that could be part of that, get more that discussion feeling, but also crowdsource, what ideas are good or bad. So it's a really nice way of enhancing that feedback. And then Jill, you want to take this last one?
Yeah, so we know that the foundation is still an important and essential piece of any modern SDI, and that metadata are an important component of that. Closely coupled metadata that follows your content through the system as you're producing, publishing, collaborating, and then ultimately sharing, using and reusing and federating. But today, the metadata editor within ArcGIS Pro is really quite different than the user experience in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise or even Hub. And behind the scenes, the code base for that is also quite different between applications. And so that's limited us, our ability as Esri to be able to do some really interesting and innovative work here. So this year, we're taking on a project to unify the metadata editor across all of ArcGIS. And while we're doing this, we are looking to simplify the user interface, to really streamline the creation of high quality metadata. And then our longer term roadmap is to look more towards automation, syncing, and other things that we can do within metadata to make it easier to create and maintain high quality metadata, because that is what supports search. It's what supports future AI applications. It really supports innovation. And as your content are shared through a catalog, and for example, with the ArcGIS Hub sites that we showed here, all of the catalogs that are associated with those, we're also then leveraging the standards, both the ISO metadata standards, but also catalog standards like the new OGC API records for modern catalog federation. So we're just at the beginning. I do want to set expectations a little bit low, but because this is a big project and it's a long-term project, but the public beta will be released in ArcGIS Online at this summer's release.
Jill, you're getting a couple hoorays for unified metadata.
It's exciting. I'll pass that back to the team.
This has been asked for a lot over the years, but that's the plan. When did you say this is going to be released?
The public beta will be released this summer with ArcGIS Online. It will also be available in public beta at the next enterprise release later in the fall. It probably won't be coming to pro until early 2024. So there'll be kind of a staggered rollout, and then eventually we'll go into public release. So I do want to invite everyone to join us at the UC. If you're attending in San Diego, we'll have a lot of activities and presentations that are going on around geospatial infrastructure and modern SDI topics. Stay tuned. We'll put together a focused agenda for this, but we have a geospatial collaboration special interest group that'll be held on Tuesday over lunchtime, and we've got some great panelists lined up, including NSGIC's own Megan Compton from Indiana. We'll have some discussion going on there, and would look forward to seeing you all there.
They also moved the GIS Managers Summit to Sunday for user conference. So if you do get in town early, come by and see us at the GIS Managers Summit. It's on the agenda. You can register. There's no cost for that. That's included in your registration. So hopefully you can join us for that. They're expecting a pretty big turnout for that one.
So this is the QR code to this story. I also put the link to this story in the chat. The story itself does have links to all of the resources and example sites that Anthony and I showed here. So I think what we'd like to do at this point is open it up and turn it back to you, Amy, and we can have a few minutes for conversation.
Thank you, Jill and Anthony. It looks like we do have some questions already. The first one is from Jane. Is there a way to import the metadata from an XML file in FGDC metadata format into HUB?
Yeah, today it's possible to do that import in ArcGIS Pro. It is not possible to import FGDC metadata into Enterprise or Online. That's on our roadmap. It's something we want to have feature parity across existing capabilities, but today to import into ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, it needs to be the ArcGIS metadata XML format. So coming, and I'll make a note of, I'll add your name to the list of people requesting that.
Richard asked, how does the Esri see its technological capabilities shown today supporting current next generation 911 needs for data intake, quality control, and dissemination support across the country?
So I could take that one, Jill, and you could probably back me up on this one. So we've worked on a couple of these different projects on grabbing addresses from across jurisdictions and rolling them up to a statewide level. In Illinois, we're doing that. Each one of the PSAPs has a desktop license of Pro. They're publishing that to their ArcGIS Online org, and then the statewide hub, which is a similar thing that we just showed you here, is using that to roll up all the different PSAP boundaries of the addresses. And then they're using on the state this solution template to roll up all of those different jurisdictional addresses. Now, that rolls that up into a statewide layer. There's other tools out there to do the quality control and other things, whether it's geocoding services or using folks like Spatial to do that conflation for that. But this is a great way of kind of just taking that data from the locals and pulling that up to the state level. Jill, anything to add on that?
I think that was great.
Yeah.
Covered it well.
So Savannah, oh, I'm sorry, Anthony, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was looking at the last question there.
Yeah, it looks like Savannah has asked kind of like a general question for anyone to answer. Has anyone attended the managers conference before? Jill and Anthony, would you like to elaborate on what it is for folks who haven't been before?
Yeah, so the GIS Managers Summit is led by a team at Esri, James Pardo and Adam Carno and team, and it was usually built into the conference, Wednesday of the conference, and it was more of like, started out as like a tabletop exercise. Well, it kind of grew beyond its means there, so they're pulling that into Sunday to have an all-day conference for GIS managers. I would say I've been a few times, and I would say it's very valuable. Mostly because you're talking to a lot of different peers, all have similar challenges, governance challenges, IT challenges, data challenges, what apps to pull out, migration efforts are all kind of talking about some very similar things, people challenges, executive challenges. So all of those different topics are discussed in kind of an unconference type of format. So you get to interact with different table members. Jill, anything to add on that? Have you been?
I haven't been, but I've seen the materials that they're putting together. You know, as we look at the pillars around modern SDI, particularly around governance, strategy, looking at finance, looking at putting together the organizational structures and so forth. I think that GIS for managers material really is particularly helpful around all of those different aspects with governance and building that organizational capacity. So very helpful.
Any other questions? Did you find this helpful? Was this good for y'all? It's worth your time.
Yeah, this was definitely worth my time, and I really appreciate you making this available to us and going through this with us. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Excellent.
Well, like we said, these, in particular, we're learning from you and your implementations as much as, you know, you're learning from us. So if we can help to serve in that role to pull together these patterns that we see emerging that are repeatable and putting this together in good practices, you know, this is really part of, you know, part of a community effort together as the NSGIC community. And so please, any input, feedback, as I said, those good practice guides are living documents. They're available publicly. They're also available in an open format. So even though they're kind of general global good practices, we know that different organizations have good practices of their own that are specific to their organization. You all are free to take any of those and adapt them and make them your own.
And we'll mention too, in September, we do have interest at Esri from our geocoding team to attend with us, right, Jill?
That's right.
So I think we're going to bring them along. So if you have any questions around that sort of geocoding data, creating your own locators, or I think we're going to have some of the team members there with us in September in New Orleans. Yeah,
they are now really leveraging the national address database and state contributions there, and getting engaged with the address and transportation theme community working group, the NSGIC working group. So I think we'll be happy to have a couple of them here at the September conference and continue the conversations I think that were started with Dean Kenzok at the mid-year.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank Anthony and Jill for both coming on and presenting today and offering these wonderful resources. I did put in the chat box our general email in case you want to stay in touch with Jill and Anthony or ask some more questions. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. Any last words, Jill and Anthony?
We look forward to seeing you in San Diego, but if you're not able to attend, we really look forward to seeing you in New Orleans in September at the NSGIC meeting.
I put my email in the chat. If you guys have any other questions, happy to follow up. So thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to present here today.
Thank you both so much again. And thank you to the audience for participating in our webinar today. I hope all of you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.